There is something, there's just something about Mondays. I don't know if y'all noticed this, but I know when my wife taught in public school, she did not like Mondays at all. In fact, not only did she not like Mondays, in fact, Mondays were so awful that they kind of made Sundays a little bit rotten. Some of you teachers know what I'm talking about. In fact, she would call Sunday after church. She would say, "This is not Sunday anymore. It's pre-Monday." Right? She knew it was coming. I see memes about Monday. There's a songs. I don't like Monday too much. I want to tell you just briefly about the Mondayest Monday I ever had. I took my day off on Monday because I was in a place in a church where Sundays I was preaching twice every Sunday, and there were always meetings on Sunday nights. And for this one season, I was preaching twice every Sunday. I was playing piano for the worship service and leading a Bible study. And so Sunday evenings, I was just exhausted. Monday, I was wiped out. And so I took Mondays off. And this one Monday, I thought, you know what? I'm going to piddle. You know what you piddle, right? I'm not going to try to get anything really done. I'm just going to go out to the garage. I'm going to maybe clean my truck so that it doesn't, smell so much like family, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I turned on my truck and I saw that I had a check engine light on. And I thought, okay, I'll go down to the auto parts store and I'll get them to tell me what this check engine light is. It's been there a while, it's probably nothing. Let me go down there. And so I go down to the auto parts store, and literally as I pull into the auto parts store for this check engine light, an officer of the law pulled in behind me. And I had this moment where I was like, this is probably just a coincidence. It wasn't. And he pulled in behind me. He said, "Sir, I wanted you to know that your tags are expired." And I said, "Oh, man." I was like, "Okay, I am so sorry, officer," to the whole, begging for forgiveness kind of groveling thing. And he says, "It's not a big deal. Just today, go ahead and get them renewed. No problem. I've got the day off. This will be perfect." So I left the auto parts store and I go to the county offices that were in the town in which I was living. I go into the county office and I'm waiting in line because, it's a county office. And so I waited in line for quite a while, and I finally get up there and I say, "Hey, I need to renew my tags." And the person behind the counter, she said, "Well, before you renew your tags, you need to get your safety inspection done." And I said, "Well, I got my safety inspection when I moved here not too long back, and no, you've got to have it done again." "All right, where can I go get my safety inspections done?" And she said, "There's one place in town over here." And I go and I find the place, and it's like behind a shop, it's like an old abandoned barn, and this old guy does safety inspections there for the whole town. And I go in and I wait for him to get my safety inspection. I go in and he looks at the car. He kind of goes in, he starts it, he honks the horn, and then he says, "Well, you got a check engine light here." I said, "Funny you should mention that." And I kind of told him the story, and he says, "Well, I'm not going to pass you until you take care of this check engine light." "All right, thanks, I appreciate that." So I go back to the auto parts store. They turn off the light, tell me what it is. It's a code on the thing, blah, 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 whatever. Not a big deal. They turn off the light. I go back to the safety inspection guy, and he says, "Okay, he passed. Everything looks good." He says, "I just need one last thing. I need your proof of insurance." I pull out my proof of insurance, and he says, "This expired last week." "Oh, well, let me just pull it up on my phone. I'm sure my wife has done whatever it takes, and I can go online and show you where it." "Oh, no, I need to see a paper copy." "Okay, all right, I'll just go back home and get a paper." So I went back home and I went online and I printed off a copy, and then I took it back to the place so that he could send me back. And then I got my inspection sticker, and then I went back to the county office, and then I waited in line. It's like 2:30 in the afternoon at this point, right? My whole day off has seemingly been ruined. I haven't even gotten piddling done. I've done nothing. My car still smells like wet dog, right? It is still filthy, and I'm frustrated. I spent my whole day waiting in line. My blood pressure is up. I am just so ready for this Monday to be like, I'm to the point that I'm ready to go back to work rather than have a day off. And then God did something. This is what happens to us sometimes, right? We're in a situation, maybe we designed it to be one thing, but it turns out it's something else. Maybe we're just kind of cruising, coasting through a day, and then you realize that you had an appointment that God has put on your calendar and you didn't realize it. Apostle Paul writes to us in Philippians chapter 1. Philippians chapter 1, he is writing to the church at Philippi. He is a man who is in prison. He is facing his imminent doom. He is in jail, and the reason he is in jail is not because he has done anything that would be against the law today, but he is in jail because he has been spreading the gospel. He's been doing exactly what God had called him to do, and it has put him into prison. And his life will end in this prison. Right? He's nearing the end of his journey as he writes this message. And while some of us would certainly be bitter about the way that had gone, some of us would be bitter that we were just doing what God told us to do, he doesn't. He doesn't get bitter. He doesn't write with bitterness. He doesn't write with any sort of anger at the way things have turned out. Instead, this is what he tells us in chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. He begins in verse 12. He says, I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. It's really served to advance the gospel, which is not what I'm sure the people in Philippi were thinking has happened, because he's out preaching the gospel. He had been preaching the gospel very effectively, leading people to Christ, making disciples, training up future leaders for the church. He's been doing the work of the gospel, and now these people, the Romans, have put him in prison to try and stop him from spreading the gospel, and he says, it didn't work. They tried to stop me from spreading the gospel, but they couldn't stop me from spreading the gospel. It's a little bit reminiscent of the story of Joseph and his brothers, how in Genesis that Joseph looks at his brothers and he says, listen, what you meant for evil, God has used for good. And Paul says, they tried to stop me from spreading the gospel, but it has backfired horribly. In verse 13, he says, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. So he says that not only did what they tried to do, they do for evil to try to shut the gospel down. Not only is that not working, but now the story of Jesus Christ, of the gospel that has led to his imprisonment, that story of the gospel, that good story is spread through all of the imperial guard. Now the men who have been charged with detaining Paul, with arresting Paul, who are going to have to one day execute Paul, those men have heard the glorious news of Jesus' plan of redemption for them. And it makes me always wonder what of those imperial guards, what do they think? I wonder what was it like going, obviously I've never been a prison guard. I wonder, what would it be like to go and to serve as a prison guard, knowing that the person that you're guarding is innocent. Knowing that they're not only innocent, but that they're good. That the thing that they have been charged with doing is a good thing, that it's the one force in the whole world that can redeem fallen humanity. What must that be like? I wonder what sort of struggle of conscience the guards must have had holding Paul. But he tells us that the gospel has gone forward. The whole of the imperial guard has heard about the gospel. See, this isn't an opportunity that Paul would have had naturally. This isn't a group of people that Paul would have been able to come in contact with any day. This is different. This is special. It's unique. It's an appointment that God made for him. And that's what God does. That's what God does. God uses a check engine light to put you in the right place at the right time. Verse 14, he says, and most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. They have been made confident by my imprisonment. He's saying, they put me here. They put me here to make an example of me. They thought, the authorities thought, that if they would imprison me, the leader of this Gentile church, if they would imprison me, then that's going to silence everybody else, right? Several years ago, my nephew, his name is Luke, one of my nephews is named Luke, and Luke is, he's just a different kind of kid. And when he was little, he was really different. He's kind of normalized a little bit as he's gotten older. Kind of some of those eccentric edges have kind of been knocked off. But when he was like 7 years old, I guess he was about the second grade, he was riling up a group of his friends in class. And it was not a one-time thing. I should say this in defense of the teacher who was having to deal with my nephew. This wasn't something that happened one time. It wasn't just one day Luke acted up in class. Oh, no. It was like every day Luke would do something different. Like there was this one day where like he snuck into the kitchen of the school cafeteria. He snuck into the kitchen to get a spoon so that at lunchtime he could bury his socks. That is the exact face that we all made when his teacher sent home a note saying, Luke got in trouble today for burying his socks. What? Like, why did you bury your socks? And he said, I don't know. I just thought it would be something weird to do. I figured I'd be the first kid that ever buried socks at school. I said, yeah, that's a weird record to hold, but okay. This one day, though, he was riling up all the kids, and his teacher had sent him out into the hallway. And his school, like most schools, there was a large window from the hallway into the classroom so that, principals, administrators walking by could kind of see in, make sure everything was going okay. Well, Luke used that window for his own purposes. And Luke put on a little dance party in the hallway. And so the teacher would be teaching with her back sort of to the window, and Luke would go and start gyrating. I'll let you use your imagination about a 7-year-old dancing. And he would, start dancing, right? And then he would step out of the window, and the teacher would not catch him. Well, the teacher, an intelligent lady, she caught on to what was going on. She goes into the hallway and gives the ultimatum, Luke, if you do this again, I'm going to paddle you. And he said, oh, okay. She goes back inside, and of course, as soon as her back is turned, he starts, doing the Macarena or something. I don't know what he was doing. He's dancing again. She turns, she sees him. She goes into the hallway, and she takes her paddle, and she spanked him 3 times. And when she was done spanking him, Luke looked at her and said, I just want you to know, you don't spank as hard as my daddy. The teacher was upset. She was real upset. She said, oh yeah? Let's see if the principal spanks harder than your daddy. Calls the principal, right? Door open, the class is hearing this because she's wanting to make an example of him. Leaves the door open, calls the principal. Principal comes down. Teacher explains everything that's happened. Says, Luke, I'm sorry about this, but your teacher's right. I'm going to have to spank you. Bends him over, spanks him 3 more times. Teacher says, does he spank harder than your daddy? Luke says, yeah, but he doesn't spank harder than my mama. It's my sister. It did not have the desired effect. Luke was undeterred from dancing in the window or riling the kids up. In fact, the behavior among all the kids got a little bit worse because they thought, spankings aren't that bad now, are they? The Romans have put Paul in prison. He's facing death. And he says, it ain't that bad. It's just a little bit of prison. While I've been here, I've gotten to share the gospel with the imperial guards. Yeah, they're going to kill me. But that's not so bad. Because for me to live is for Christ, and for me to die is gain. So this isn't so bad. So what the Romans are doing to me, it really isn't so bad. And all of the brothers are hearing this, and they're saying, well, the Romans spank pretty hard, but they don't spank as hard as our daddy. What they may do to us may be awful to them, but I know that my God holds the key to eternity. I know that in the timeline and that long rope of my life that this is just a short little bit. And so I'm not going to be deterred from doing what is of eternal significance because of a temporary punishment. The brothers were encouraged by his imprisonment. And this is the thing about our story. This is the thing about our story. We've said that our story is powerful. We used the woman at the well. We said that her story changed a whole town. We said that our story is worth remembering, and it is. Our story is worth remembering. Last week we said that our story is long, so that we can't get caught up on what's happening in this chapter or happened in the last chapter, but our story is long. Here's the thing I want you to take away today. I want you to remember that your story gives courage. Your story gives courage to other people. Other people will hear your good story, and they'll be encouraged by it. Your story may say, I was facing this horrible thing, and yet it really wasn't that bad. God got me through it. Your story at one point in your life, for many of us, our story will be, I'm facing death. It's coming, that is certain. But I know that to live is Christ, to die is gain. So I can face this. I can handle this knowing that my God holds the keys to the kingdom, that my God holds the keys to life and to death, and that this is a temporary part of an eternal story. Your story can give courage to other people. And so, we share our story. We are supposed to share our story. We are supposed to share the ways that God is dealing with us, the way that God is working in our lives. And so today, and I've talked a lot over the last year about my story, today I want you to be able to hear a couple of your stories. I've got a video prepared, and I want you to be able to hear some things that God is doing and has done at North Orange Baptist Church.
I had a good story that I'd be willing to share, and I told him I had several. Didn't know that he wanted me to share them. At least not on the sanctuary. I'm just kidding, for the most part. But I reluctantly agreed to do this, and I don't know why I was reluctant about it. You know, I'm always wanting to talk. Never been in a position in my life before now where I'm more willing to talk about Christ with other people. And I guess the good story, the good part of my story that's going on right now is that fact. You know, we can all make excuses just like I do. We can say we're too busy. I've got 3 kids who are in everything, and it takes up a lot of time. Life, work, sleep, you know, everything takes up our time. And I don't know, I guess I'm just tired of not doing what it is that we're here to do. You know, I was sharing with, I forgot who I was talking to. I was telling them about the lesson that we had last week or 2 weeks ago. And in the learner's text, it said, God, whatever is in me that's keeping me from you, take it away from me. You know, remove it. Whatever that is. It doesn't have to be an addiction. It doesn't have to be an affliction. It could be your workplace. It could be your friends. It could be your Saturday nights for your Sunday mornings. I guess my good story is this. I don't have Saturday nights like that anymore. Don't ever intend to have them again.
So God has done a lot for us in an unexpected way. So we were one of the families that was impacted by Harvey. A lot of people around here were. So through Harvey, our initial reaction was, despair. Like, oh my goodness, our plans are ruined. We were getting ready for a baby on the way. We were 8 months pregnant when Harvey happened. And through the aftermath of Harvey, we were displaced for almost a year. And about 3 months after Harvey, we found out that we were getting 2 more kids. We were getting Joseph and Athena.
Right before Christmas.
Yep. I think we found out on Christmas Day. So, Merry Christmas. Because of Harvey, we were actually more ready to take on these kids than we would have been in almost any other situation. So God had turned what should have been and was this disaster into a way to prepare us the best.
Instead of it being us rolling the kids into the life that we had, God took our life, turned it upside down and dumped it out, and then he filled it back up with 2 kids involved.
2 additional kids.
Yeah. So I guess 3 new kids, actually. It worked out in a way that we certainly wouldn't have planned. We certainly wouldn't have done on purpose. I mean, who was about to get 3 kids and was like, okay, let's destroy the house? We were more prepared in ways we couldn't have possibly done or thought of doing on our own.
And the kids actually were blessed through that too. They got a whole semester with their grandma that, most kids would dream for that. And through that semester with her, she grew a lot, and then they were able to develop and grow, get ready for a new school life, get ready for life with us. It was more of a transition for them while we were just wrapping our heads and our finances and our house around these upcoming kids.
It's kind of interesting. He did bring on the kids in somewhat a sudden way, but he prepared us through us talking about adopting kids for years ahead of time. And then when we actually knew we were getting the kids, he actually gave us planners about 6 months to figure ourselves out so that when the kids actually came to live with us, we were as prepared as we could be.
Well, and I think even more than that, we knew that there was a possibility we would take these specific ones, Joseph and Athena, 2 years ahead. We had talked through the possibility, we had seen a little bit of the writing on the wall, and so God gave us that opportunity to talk it through with ourselves and then with some of the rest of the family and be like, are we willing, are we ready if that opportunity or that need arose? And then when the need arose, it was something that God was like, hey, you guys are planners. I've given you 2 years to think about it. Now is the time. And so we were, without hesitation, really. There was scared, obviously, but without hesitation, we were able to say, no, we want them. This is the time for them to join our family. It's crazy. I think any time you've got 3 kids, especially without the years that most people have to prepare living with them, makes it crazy, but it's in a good way. They're part of our heart, and that's wonderful.
And it really helped us to decide what was the most important in life and let all the rest of it slowly fade away. It still wants to come back from time to time, and that's when we can reinforce each other, but it's really great that we had that leading early on so that whenever we do have doubts or whenever we're feeling down, we can look back and know that God set this up. God took our life, turned it upside down and dumped it out, and then he filled it back.
My story starts with a man. I'm going to call him Richard because that was his name. Richard, he had a wife and 2 sons, and at this point in Richard's life, faith was not something that was that important to him, and therefore not that important to his family either. Typically on Sunday mornings, you wouldn't find them in church, that worshiping together, but Richard's typical Sunday morning ritual would be to go down to the gas station, pick up a newspaper, and it was while he was doing this, he was at the gas station, that he ran into a friend of his on this Sunday morning, and his friend decided to invite Richard to church. Well, it must have been the Holy Spirit through this man working on Richard's heart, because Richard decided that that Sunday his family needed to go worship the Lord together in church, and that's what they did. They got up and they got dressed and they went to church together, and it was this same day that Richard gave his life over to the Lord for the first time. In fact, it was this same day that Richard's whole family made Jesus their Lord of their lives. And they would continue participating in this church and worshiping together, serving together, and knowing God and growing together. And later on, it was Richard's older son who would feel a call to the ministry, and he would go on to become the pastor of this same church. And Richard's younger son, well, he also felt a call to the ministry, not to the pastoral ministry, but to the teaching ministry. And this younger son of Richard's, he had a son as well. And Richard's younger son's son, well, that would be me. And it was because of Richard's influence on his son's lives and his son's influences on my life. Because of that good story, because of their influence, I have a good story to tell as well.
Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Our goal here as a church is to grow disciples. Part of growing disciples is sharing our story, is telling the story of the good things that God is doing in our lives. So what's your story? What are the things that are happening with you? What are the things that God is, He's opening doors, He's closing doors, He's moving things around? It may be, well, for me, one of my stories is that He turned on a check engine light. I know. My improper vehicle maintenance is really what turned on the check engine light. But on this particular day, God used a check engine light to put me in line at 2:30 in the afternoon, so that as I was waiting in the county office to see a lady again about my tags, I got to overhear a mother and her teenage son fretting about their impending appointment to talk to the judge. I got to hear the guilt trip that she was steadily laying on him. I got to hear the contrition, the pain in his voice. I got to go over and talk to him and say, hey, I know the judge. And say, ultimately, you're going to stand before this judge, and he's a good man. He's got a good heart. He's a deacon at my church. He's a Sunday school teacher. He's a wonderful man, really is. He's going to do justice, but ultimately, you're going to stand before a judge with so much more authority than this man. Ultimately, you're going to stand at the end of your life before a judge of all creatures, and you're going to have to give account. And so I wonder, as you face that judge, are you ready? Are you ready to face that judge, to look back at the ledger of your life and say, this is what I have to show for the life you gave me? Had the opportunity to share Jesus Christ that day because of a check engine light and a police officer and an old-fashioned vehicle inspector who wouldn't use the internet and 100 other little details that put me in the right spot at the right time to tell a good story. Billy Graham put it this way. He said that courage is contagious. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened. So what is your story? This morning, I want to, you may have noticed, you're like, wow, he's getting to the end at 11:40. It's not so we can beat the Methodists to Roberts, although it's